Hey guys, it's Terrence here with FishnetProductions.com, coming to you with another video today. Today is the fifth and final video in the series that I'm doing on EQ. Now, if you haven't checked out the past four videos, be sure to go back and check those out. All four of those are sort of a culmination of videos leading up to this fifth video that we're doing here today. So today we're going to be talking about mastering with EQ. So let's go ahead and jump in. Now, without going into too much about the whole process of mastering and everything that it entails, I'd like to give you an analogy that I tend to keep in my head that I heard a while back that kind of helps me remember this whole process of mastering with EQ. And that is that mastering can be thought of as Photoshop for audio. So with Photoshop, you have a photo. You basically import your photo into Photoshop. Now, the photo is already done. Everything about the picture, all of the details about it is done. The lighting, the background, the foreground, everything in this particular picture is already done. So all you're trying to do basically at that point in Photoshop is make subtle enhancements to that photo. Now, the same thing here with mastering with audio and EQ. You basically have an already completed stereo track, and all you're trying to do at this point is make some subtle enhancements to it based off your particular style or tastes, or based off the particular genre of the music. So mastering then involves a lot of listening. It involves using your ears to kind of determine what's going on with the track and send what you want to enhance, just as you would with Photoshop. If you import a picture in and you want to make some enhancements to it, you need to look at that picture, find out what are some of the details going on in the picture. Are there, maybe marks or something on the subject's face that you want to kind of take out or anything like that. So it's the same thing with this audio. So the first thing we're going to do here is just have a listen to the track. Let's listen to about 30 seconds of it or so. Now, this is the same track we've been using in the past four videos with the EQ series. So let's just give the track a listen and find out what's going on with it, and we can make some decisions from there. All right, here we go.
If you think you'll slip away, you're wrong. If you think you'll get away with it again, 'cause I'm a virus, an infection that will sit on your brain, but you fear no pain. You don't have to fear me, just trust my word, come over, you'll be fine.
All right, nice and well balanced track. Nothing particularly wrong with the track. No issues like, anything that we need to go in and fix. So all we're going to do at this point is make some enhancements. Now, let's talk about how we're going to do that with EQ. So basically, I have the VEQ4 here. Now, my recommendation with mastering with EQ is that you limit the amount of bands that you use in the EQ. So generally what I like to do is limit it to 3 bands of what I call basically the lows, the mids, and the highs. Now, just to define what those parameters are, for me, I would usually use anywhere from about 160 hertz below as my low frequency, everything from about 160 to about maybe about 3.5K would be my mid frequencies, which is a really big frequency range. And then everything from 3.5 up would be my high frequency range, and I would deal with those accordingly. Now, again, that's just a general setting, and that's just my general recommendation of starting. Of course, you can apply more bands if there's something you need to go in and particularly fix or enhance or something like that. But generally speaking, with a well-balanced track that's already pretty good, that you're only doing some enhancements to, you basically can just set those 3 EQ parameters to those settings and pretty much deal with them from there. So now the track we're listening to is a hip hop track. Now, hip hop tracks are very notorious for their low end, for that kick drum and that bass guitar kind of jumping out at you and kind of hitting you in the chest and kind of thumping a little bit. So that's the first thing we're going to do with this track. We're going to go in and fish that out with the EQ, try to just enhance it just a little bit, and give it a little edge on the track. All right, so let's give it a listen, and I'll go ahead and fish that out and then give it a little boost. Here we go.
If you think you'll slip away, you're wrong. If you think you'll get away with it again, fear no pain. You don't have to fear me. Just trust my word. Come over, you'll be fine.
All right, guys. So basically what I did here is I took the low frequency knob here and I just boosted and I kind of swept around to that frequency where that bass and that kick drum kind of jumped out at me a little bit more and had a little bit more punch. And I decided to set it here on the 56 hertz range. Now with mastering EQ on the low end, I always tend to use Bell filters on the low end. And the reason is because I don't want to use a shelving filter because I don't want to go in and bring out any more mud in the track. I want to get specific right there where that bass guitar and that kick drum is sitting, so I can just enhance those a little bit without bringing out that mud to the track. All right, so now let's A and B that and see what kind of difference that made to the low end. Give the bass guitar and the kick drum a listen in the track and see what it's doing. So I'll start with it off and then I'll turn it on. Here we go.
If you think you'll slip away, you're wrong. If you think you'll get away with it again, 'cause I'm a virus, an infection that will sit on your brain. But you fear no pain.
All right, really nice and subtle boost down there where that kick drum and bass guitar is. It just brought it out a little bit, gave it a little bit more edge. Now, the next thing we're going to do is in the high frequencies. One of the things that's really common with hip hop music and music in general nowadays is that it's really sort of hyper bright. It has this nice high end going on to it that you wouldn't get, just in your mixing phase. Most of the times I see engineers doing this in the mastering phase. So basically what we're going to be looking for is just those frequencies of the entire track that will kind of bring that high end of the track up a little bit. Now for this particular one, I'm going to be using the shelving filter as opposed to the curve filter in the low end, because on the high filters, again, I am trying to bring out the air and the high end of the whole entire track. I'm not specifically going in and looking for, a particular instrument or vocal in that high frequency range. I just want to bring out the highs of the track overall. All right, so let's take this high frequency EQ and let's go in and do that with the shelving EQ turn on. All right, here we go.
If you think you'll slip away, you're wrong. If you think you'll get away with it again, 'cause I'm a virus, an infection that will sit on your brain. But you fear no pain. You don't have to fear me. Just trust my word. Come over, you'll be fine. You can run, you can hide, but
All right, really nice high-end boost to the high frequencies in the track. Now, one thing I should say about boosting and cutting with using mastering EQ is that generally you should keep the boosts and cuts very minimal. In fact, my boosts and cuts in mastering EQ, I try to keep it at 3 dB plus or minus 3 dB either way. So I tend to not go above or below that at all. Generally speaking, I even like to stay less than that if possible. So you see here, I only did a 2.2 dB boost. In the low end, I only did a 2 dB. Because again, we're just enhancing stuff. We're not going in and trying to change or fix the track overall. We're just making subtle enhancements. So again, I would recommend that you keep it 3 dB or less. Now, I am aware that there are some instances where you may need to go in and, specifically fish things out or, take things out or boost something, more drastic than a 3 dB boost. But generally speaking, in an EQ setting where the track is already sitting nice, there's nothing really wrong with it. You're making some subtle enhancements. I think 3 dB boost with most EQs are pretty good, and they keep you in that range where you're not causing any damage to the track. All right, so the next thing we're going to do here is let's go in and listen to the track and find out if there's any muddy frequencies or anything that we need to take out in this mid-range here. So let's have a listen to the track and let's give it some boost and find out what's going on. Okay, here we go.
If you think you'll slip away, you're wrong. If you think you'll get away with it again, 'cause I'm a virus, an infection that will sit on your brain, but you fear no pain. You don't have to fear me, just trust my work come over you.
Now, not a lot of muddy stuff going on in this track at all, and I actually tend to like this sort of boost, what it's doing to the track up in this 220 to 270 range. However, for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to cut it maybe about a dB and a half. Let's try that and see what effect it's having on the track. Now let's give this whole EQ setting here, everything that we've done with the low end, the mids, and the highs. Let's bypass that on and off and see what kind of difference it's making with the track, and we'll go from there. Here we go.
If you think you'll slip away, you're wrong. If you think you'll get away with it again, 'cause I'm a virus, an infection that will sit on your brain, but you fear no pain. You.
All right, a really good enhancement there. I kind of like actually too what this cut did in that 220 hertz range. Actually listen to it again and listen to that bass guitar and watch the high end of that bass guitar be a little bit more clear and be a little bit more articulated. Give that a listen. Check it out. Here we go.
If you think you'll slip away, you're wrong. If you think you'll get away with it again, 'cause I'm a virus, an infection that will sit on your brain, but you fear no pain. You.
All right, great. Yeah, really nice subtle enhancement there. Basically what we did, the low end took that kick drum and the bass guitar, it brought it forward just a little bit, something that's really typical with hip hop tracks. And the low mids here, the subtraction of this 220 frequency kind of cleared out a little bit of mud in the track that was in there and gave that bass guitar a little bit more clarity and articulation up in the higher registers here. And this high frequency boost, basically what it did was bring out that vocal, it brought that vocal toward you a little bit more, and you can hear that hi-hat kind of jump out at you a little bit more. So listen to those three things one more time, again, with this subtle EQ moves that we're doing here. Basically 2 dB and the low frequencies, 1.5 dB cut in the low mid frequencies, and then 2.2 dB boost in the high frequencies. So again, listen to those three things. Listen to that vocal in the hi-hat jump out at you from the highs. Listen to that bass guitar start to be a little bit more clear here. And then listen to the kick drum and bass guitar, the low end of that kind of jump out at you a little bit more. All right, here we go.
If you think you'll slip away, you're wrong. If you think you'll get away with it again, 'cause I'm a virus, an infection that will sit on your brain, but you fear no pain. You.
All right, guys, really nice and subtle EQ moves here done in this track. You can see with the very simple moves that we've done here, we've made some enhancements to the track that did the track justice. We didn't damage anything. We didn't take anything that was supposed to be there away or anything like that. We just made that Photoshop enhancement. That's all we did. So again, a quick recap of this, guys. Keep your mastering EQ moves, keep them subtle. My recommendation again is not to go above 3 dB boost in any direction, plus or minus on anything, unless it's just absolutely necessary. Keep those moves very subtle. Divide your frequency ranges up into 3 frequency bands. Now this can be pretty much done with any EQ. A lot of EQs have more frequency bands than this one, so you could literally just leave those turned off. Deal with the low end, set the curves to where it's boosting, you know, in that low frequency area, the mid frequency area, and the higher frequency area, and leave it at that. Keep the move subtle, and you will be on your way with mastering with EQ. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me in this series of EQ videos. I really hope that you've gotten something out of these videos. My whole purpose was to simply just let you in on my philosophy of mixing and share some things with you about how I do things in hopes that it will help you get better as a mixer. So again, thank you so much for watching. Now, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you go do that now. I'm going to be starting another very important series in mixing very soon, and I don't want you to miss that. So make sure you go subscribe to the channel so you'll get those notifications. And until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.